The reason I want to talk about Nelson Mandela is because his life poses another set of questions that I think we really truly need to think about. Let me put this in perspective. I really want you all to listen to me on this. Because folks, you think you have a position. You think you believe in something. Here's how you know you believe in something. Would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor and torture and inhumane treatment for your preferred presidential candidate? Sit with that. You so upset? You so upset? Would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor and torture and inhumane treatment for what you believe? You believe that so deeply? It's upsetting you so much. You're like, man, put me in solitary confinement. I believe that deeply. See, here's the problem. Like, most of us haven't figured out what our anchor is. And see, when you have an anchor, that is what you're willing to die for. When you have an anchor, a real true anchor that the Creator gave you, that is what you're willing to suffer for. Nothing else is suffering. Nothing else is, you follow? I honestly believe that because we're not anchored, we're operating so close to the surface that the waves just blow us however we go.
If you wanna be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Now, inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live a dream. Your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals.
I got to tell you all, I've listened to last week's show probably not 3 times for sure, and I started to listen a 4th because I really wanted to understand the listening audience. I'm like, man, what's really happening? And part of me wanting to really understand the listening audience is because, you know, I get on the airwaves Sunday in and Sunday out to support you all, to really support our community with what I believe is what the Creator has blessed me with in terms of exposure and knowledge from the work I've been privileged to do, but also because it's my purpose. Like, it's my purpose to support those around me and living the best life possible. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. That's what pushes me. That's what informs how I move. And part of the reason I listened to the show 3 or 4 times is because I was really concerned with what I heard. And it's not so much the position that people took. That, I was sharing with Ade, that doesn't really matter to me. And regardless of the outcome of the election, like how I felt and how I moved wouldn't have changed much. And that's what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is the hidden cost of giving away your emotional currency. So maybe you all can better understand me because I got a couple of emails and notes where people made assumptions about what my political views may or may not be based on what they thought was my lack of concern or my lack of emotionalism around the subject. Like, well, if you can If you seem okay, then this is where you might be. And I want to tell you today why I'm okay, regardless of the outcome. Because for me, my emotional currency is just too expensive. It's too expensive to allow external circumstances, to allow external situations to dictate for a great deal of time. I'm not saying I'm a robot, right? But I'm talking about in terms of how long I'm going to remain in a particular emotional state. There is very little outside of me that can impact that. Like, I think about some of the biggest emotional impacts on my life in the last 3 to 5 years. And the major one that comes to mind is the death of my mother, where there was something that took place outside of me that really dictated how I felt for an extended amount of time. And I think anybody would say, well, yeah, that seems normal. But when it's removed from family, like the things I care about most, then I would say that I'm pretty resilient, emotionally resilient. And it's something I practice. And the reason I practice it is because one of the life lessons I learned very early on is that if you don't develop emotional control and resilience, other people will own you and your experience of life. You can write that one down. If you do not develop emotional control and resilience, other people will own you and your experience of life. Let me paraphrase that. That if you do not develop emotional control and resilience, Trump will own you and your experience of life for the next 4 years. Now, I know that just made somebody emotional. No, he won't. And it's like, but he already has. Let me tell you why I know that to be true. Last week, part of what I experienced on the airwaves was a level of disrespect, and I've been disrespected on the air before. But a level of disrespect that I don't encounter much, right? By the way, for maybe my lack of emotion and my objectivity, which I believe is something that anybody who plays a journalistic role in media should have. And unfortunately, in today's world, that's just not the case. More often than not, there are journalists who share incredibly biased opinions. And I think that's one of the reasons emotionalism has really taken root in our culture in the way that it is. But again, if you don't develop emotional control and resilience, other people will own you and your experience of life. And anybody that knows me well knows that I am not in the game of being owned. And I'm not in the game of being controlled. You can just ask the people closest to me. Like, I'm not in that game. So I want to pose a question to you this morning as we get into this topic of the hidden cost of giving away your emotional currency. Because what I'm afraid of, especially in our community, because we tend to be emotional, and we'll call it passion. I'm just passionate. It's like, okay, but can you funnel that passion? Can you control that passion? Is that passion something that you know how to ignite and actually direct in a direction that is going to support you and those that you love in a way that continually gives back to you? Or is it these moments of passion that you have to go back and try to recuperate from? You got to go back and clean things up. Like, that's the question. Like, are you in control of your emotions, or are external events like this past week's election controlling you? Or the previous week's election, I'm sorry. Are they controlling you? Linnell, you just don't understand. It's a simple question. It's a yes or no question. It's a closed question. Are you in control of your emotions, or are external events, I don't care what the event is, right? And I believe I just, in some ways, put an asterisk on it. Like, I ain't talking about a close loved one's death or what's happening in your family and things like that. I'm talking about external, things you can't even touch. Are you in control of your emotions, or are external events like this previous week's election controlling you? And here's the question: will you allow it to control you for the next 4 years? Because if so, what I can promise you is that you're not going to get anything worthwhile done in your life. And it's likely that you've been in a cycle of emotionalism, which is why you can't get anything done in your life, because you've been giving away the most valuable currency that you have. Emotional currency is part of the most valuable currency that you have. So today, what I want to do is I want to explore why emotional energy is your most valuable resource. And for those of you who are interested, how to protect it from being wasted on what doesn't matter. Now, that's a bold statement. You say, well, what do you mean it doesn't matter? I believe this. I believe that most of what we see on the news, most of what we follow in the media, most of what gets us super excited, upset, triggered on social media doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of the life you intend to live. And one of the reasons most of us lack focus, one of the reasons most of us haven't been able to create on a high capacity in our lives, is because we've been giving emotional currency to things that are far outside of ourselves versus investing that emotional currency into our vision for our lives in terms of what we intend to create, our vision in alignment with the Creator's purpose for our lives. Instead, we're being emotionally manipulated. And that's expensive. That's expensive. It's interesting because when I first used to come on the air, one of the things that I used to talk about a great deal was mass media and the impact that mass media had on our lives. And when I spoke about that, more often than not, it was the information itself, right? They're telling us things that, they're influencing how we eat in the commercials. They're influencing how we drink in the commercial. Like that was part of my concern initially. But the more I began thinking about the role that mass media plays in many of our lives, what's happened, and by the way, that it was almost like a corner was turned during the pandemic where the fear mongering started. And what the media began to do is they began to use fear as a way to keep you watching, right? Because what's going to happen next? And so one of the greatest ways to kind of get into that psychological place of being thrilled, like a thriller, you watch a good movie and it's a thriller, it keeps you on the edge of your seat. Like the media figured out how to keep us on the edge of our seat, not just for 60 minutes, not just for 120 minutes, but for days. Like on the edge, we're going to share the number of deaths and how many people are impacted over the next week. And you just, and we sat there. Well, y'all sat there. Well, some of y'all sat there on the edge of your seats, like watching what was happening in fear, which is an emotion, which is a frequency, which is a vibration. And so the media switched from, we're just not going to influence how you think about things. We're not just going to tell you what to eat. We're not just going to tell you what to wear and what to drive and how to live. Now we're going to also instruct you on how to feel. And what I'm afraid of is many of us completely relinquished our emotional currency and power. And your emotional currency is the most expensive currency you have. If you wanna know if I was upset last week, I wasn't upset. I was concerned. Like I was concerned. I'm like, man, what's happening here? Like, look how easily we've given away our emotional currency. And I'm not just talking about folks that are upset. I'm talking about folks that were really, really happy or had deep feelings of joy based on an external circumstance, because that should be generated from inside. That type of joy should be experienced as a result of achieving lifetime goals, not because something external took place that I'm happy about. And I get that some, like, hey, there were stakes. Some people felt like there were stakes. There were things at stake. But what's at stake is your life. What's really at stake is your health. What's really at stake are your relationships. I heard one particular clip on social media where the anchor was talking to a psychologist. And the psychologist actually suggested that if you didn't share similar political views with your family, you shouldn't go see them on a holiday. I thought to myself, this is where we are. This is where we are. Like we can't have opposing views and still love one another. This is where we are. Like we can't have different beliefs and still love one another. And then when you look at most of us call ourselves follower of Yahshua, where what we're supposed to express is love. And then for the other segment of us, we call ourselves followers of Muhammad and subject to the laws and words of Allah. But isn't part of the instruction there to love? Like I'm having a hard time. I'm trying to figure this one out. Like where do we draw the line on where love is what we provide, or it's conditional? It's based on what you believe. It's based on your preferences. It's just simply not how I was taught. So here's another question. What have you allowed to take over your emotions? Like what have you allowed to actually dictate where you place emotional currency? Your emotions should be fueled by the vision the Creator planted in your life, not someone else's narrative of how you should feel. And I think what's happening is you got folks out here who call themselves experts that we believe. You got folks out here that call themselves journalists that we believe. We got folks out here. I mean, the list goes on. And what's happened is we've become emotionally vested in their narratives. And their narratives change with the wind. And so if they tell you to feel good, you feel good. If they tell you to get scared, you get scared. If they tell you to be concerned and anxious, you get concerned and anxious. And they're allowing whatever vibration that they sit in to become, no, you're allowing whatever vibration they sit in to become your vibration, to become your frequency. There are three components of a goal. Number one is the objective, like what it is you intend to create. because we are creators. Whether you figured out how to be a powerful creator or not, you're creating something. All you got to do is look around you. All you got to do is just check out your personal space right now. However it looks, whatever's going on, you created that. You are responsible for that. That is your stuff. That is your creation. That's your creation. You did that, man. Linnell, you don't understand my life. It's not my fault what's happening right here. Okay, well, you can be a victim of it if you want to, but it is your emotional frequency. It is your vibration that created your current situation. That's just how it goes. That is a universal law, which is one of the laws the Creator laid out in the beginning. And whether you understand the law or not, whether you know the law, whether you're ignorant of the law is still in effect. It's still going to work. It has nothing to do with your ignorance or lack thereof. Like it is, the law is still going to work. So you look around, you take in what's in your space, what's in your environment. You created that. And my belief is the only way to, if you look around and you don't like what you see, the only way to shift that is to become emotionally vested in a vision that transforms your current situation. It's the only way to shift it. And when you get emotionally vested in your vision, there's not that much room left for emotionalism everywhere else. Linnell, how can you be so calm? There's not much room left for emotionalism everywhere else. Linnell, this election didn't upset you. This election didn't make you feel a certain type of way. There's not much room left for emotionalism anywhere else. Because I already got a 4-year plan. And that 4-year plan had nothing to do with who was in office. That 4-year plan had nothing to do with who got elected. That 4-year plan was going to be implemented, will be implemented no matter who got in office. Like the vision don't shift, the vision don't change. So what happens when adversity strikes and your resilience is tested? What happens to you? Because consider that this is just one form of adversity. And this is a form of adversity that is actually slightly distant. Outside of the fact that we can turn on our televisions and look at our phones and see what's going on and get updated information. Outside of the fact that that might create an emotional impact for you, nobody knocked on your door. Hey, you come with us. We just made a decision. That decision impacts you. Like, no, that didn't happen. Like, nobody locked you out your vehicle. Most of us, you still woke up and went to the same job. Outside of your anxiety, you have the same routine. Like, what changed? What shifted? So what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bend but not break. That's what resilience is. Resilience is the ability to bend but not break. So the question becomes, how resilient are you? One of the reasons I'm so concerned is because when I think about the law of vibration, this universal law that the Creator gave us that allows us to create at a high capacity. What I know about the law of vibration is that the energy of your emotions determines the quality of your experiences. And high vibrations like peace and joy elevate your life while low vibrations like anger and frustration deplete it. And so when I listen to last week's show, when I think about last week's show and I heard the level of anger and frustration, what concerned me the most is that the people that I care about, the community that I care about, is going into a cycle of depletion and they don't even realize it. And they're saying, well, the cycle of depletion that we're going to enter, Linnell, is not our fault. We're victims of the election. And what I'm trying to tell you is what matters more than anything is your personal emotional state, because your personal emotional state is what will dictate what happens to you. Not who's in office, not the president. I think we got to begin considering first and foremost that we are the CEOs and presidents of our own lives. So what is your 4-year vision? You don't like what you're hearing? You don't like where things are going? Who are you appointing to your personal cabinet? Who's on your board of directors? Who are you going to have making decisions for you in your life? Like maybe you unplug from all the things that you're hearing and you begin to get to work in your own life. Get to work on your own cabinet. Get to work on your own board of directors, because you are a CEO. Whether you believe it or not. And if you're just now realizing that, that's why the business you're running is in the state that it's in. With love. With love. The law of correspondence states, I want us to get this, man. Like these laws don't just work when you think about them. These laws are working all the time. So then when I'm giving up my emotional currency, when I'm allowing myself to get angry and frustrated about external circumstances that have nothing to do with my vision for my life, that have nothing to do with my family. And I know you're saying it has everything to do with my life. It has everything to do with my family. And I'm asking you, really? Really? You give it that much control? The law of correspondence says what you see in your external world reflects the state of your inner emotions. I want you to realize right now, I want you to begin really, really seeing right now that the reason you see what recently happened, what is going on in this country, the way that you do, is more of a reflection of where you are emotionally. If your external world feels chaotic, listen to me. If your external world feels chaotic right now, it might be time to check your inner emotional balance. It's you. It's not them. It's you. Emotional fitness is a state of readiness. A state of readiness. Linnell, how can you say it's me? Because the best soldiers can be inserted into a chaotic combat scene. They don't lose their wits. They assess the situation. Say, lay on the ground, bullets flying over their head. Okay, what's the next move? Emotional fitness is a state of readiness. A state of readiness. To the brothers out there, a lot of us, we want to be considered bad boys. But you can't be a bad boy if you can't control your own emotions. You can't be a for real tough guy if you can't control your own emotions. If you can't control your own emotions, you don't want to mess with me. I have you emotionally tongue twisted and tied before it even get physical. You can't control yourself inside. Anybody that knows martial arts knows that one of the first things they do is tell you to calm yourself, breathe, don't get angry. If you attack from a place of balance. Most of us want to be thought of as soldiers, but you're off balance right now. I'm talking to the men right now. Like most of us, we want to look at ourselves as if we got it together, but you're off balance right now. Emotional fitness is a state of readiness. A state of readiness, resilience, resourcefulness, and relentlessness. You know what relentless means? Do you know what relentless means? To be relentless means like nothing matters. Like everything outside of me doesn't matter. So I'm still focused. I'm still ready. More importantly, building emotional fitness ensures you're not unknowingly paying the hidden cost of giving away your emotional currency. There's a cost. There's a cost. There's a cost. I'm emotionally vested in my vision. And because of that, there's not much room left for emotionalism everywhere else. So what happens when adversity strikes? See, this is how you know, folks. That's how you know people. Almost every assessment, as a coach, we provide assessments. And almost every assessment that we provide our clients, that assessment is not asking or trying to find out who they are in normal situations. Because in normal situations, I can show up all kinds of ways. What we're doing is we're asking questions that actually begin to assess how they show up when they're stressed. Because that's where the work needs to be done. How you show up when things aren't going quite your way. How do you show up when adversity strikes and your resilience is tested? Where do you go? The law of attraction states, this is a secondary law behind the law of vibration, but the law of attraction states, when your emotional fitness aligns with positive focus, you attract the outcomes you desire. Emotional weakness, however, can draw challenges into your life. Now, let me ask you, you got enough challenges already? I would imagine that most of us listening, I have enough challenges. My wife and I spent the day yesterday after I supported the Common Ground Foundation, like working through our challenges, establishing some clarity around our challenges that we're ready to meet, challenges that we're excited for in 2025. But that was the focus. That was the conversation, the vision. That's where the work was being done, in the vision. The definition of resilience, the ability to bend but not break. The ability to bend but not break. Wayne Dyer has a quote, and he says, if you can't change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. No, I'm sorry. If you can change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Right? Like if I can change the way I look at things, then the things I look at change. If I can change the way that I see how the election results hit, then the election results actually change for me. Like, what can I create in this new administration? How does my vision align with where things are going? So now when I hear information, I'm like, okay, all right. Maybe we should be playing this game. Maybe I should be going about things this way. I was talking to someone yesterday. They're like, man, the big setup is coming. These cabinet picks, like, they're about to try to take over America. The power grid's going to go out and this, that, and the other. I'm like, hey, I'm not saying that might not be true. I'm not saying that it is true. I'm like, that's interesting. Huh. Well, I've been saying we need a generator at the house. maybe I'll make that happen just in case. But I'm not about to sit up and worry about it. I'm not about to let it disrupt my emotional currency. Just going to do something. I want to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your belief in yourself? Isn't that what matters? Isn't that what matters? On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your belief in yourself? And based on that belief, do external circumstances impact how you believe in you? How you believe in what you can do? Linnell, you just don't understand my life. Yeah, that's why after the break, I want to explore the life of Mandela. His teachings, how he taught us emotional mastery, and how we can shift from surviving to thriving no matter what's happening around us. See, here's the thing. We have these romantic relationships with folks like Nelson Mandela. That brother was amazing. But don't bring him up right now. Don't teach me about that right now. I want to be mad. I want to be upset. And see, then there are some folks like Nelson Mandela that, like, if he was a little emotional about what happened to him, I guess we'd have to give him a pass. It's so bad for you, is it? And I know we don't compare ourselves, but I'm just saying, like, it's so bad for you, is it? And we look at leaders like Nelson Mandela and how they handled adversity. What is resilience? The ability to bend, but not break. The ability to bend. How are you handling adversity? The law of correspondence, resilience, is about shifting your internal world so your external world becomes a reflection of strength and peace. Who do I need to be inside where nobody can get to me? So that way, no matter what's happening outside, I'm shielded. I'm not giving away my most expensive currency. There's two currencies, man. Like the two most expensive currencies that I believe, based on everything that I've learned, is time and your emotional energy. Why do you think people get so upset when they get played in a relationship? What do they say? You wasted my time and my emotional energy. I loved you. Like, you wasted my emotional energy, bro. You wasted my emotional energy, sis. You get my going? Like, those are the most expensive currencies that we have. So how much time are you going to spend feeling bad? Today's show, the hidden cost of giving away your emotional energy. Your emotional energy. If you don't develop emotional control and resilience, other people will own you and your experience of life. And if you've been emotional most of your life, consider that you've been owned most of your life. The reason I want to talk about Nelson Mandela is because his life poses another set of questions that I think we really truly need to think about, especially us as men. The first question: would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor, torture, and inhumane treatment for what you believe? Let me put this in perspective. I really want you all to listen to me on this. Because, folks, you think you have a position. You think you believe in something. Here's how you know you believe in something. Would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor and torture and inhumane treatment for your preferred presidential candidate? Sit with that. You so upset? You so upset? Would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor and torture and inhumane treatment for what you believe? You believe that so deeply? It's upsetting you so much? You're like, man, put me in solitary confinement. I believe that deeply. See, here's the problem. Like, most of us haven't figured out what our anchor is. And see, when you have an anchor, that is what you're willing to die for. When you have an anchor, a real true anchor that the Creator gave you, that is what you're willing to suffer for. Nothing else is suffering. Nothing else is, you follow? I honestly believe that because we're not anchored, we're operating so close to the surface that the waves just blow us however we go. You're operating so close. So now, oh, I'm so upset. It's like, okay. But if you were anchored, like the brother Tony said in the comments, he was like, look, man, I had to bury myself in Proverbs and Psalms to pull myself together post-election. I love that, Tony. He did it for himself. He used the word to pull himself back in. Wait a second. Let me pull myself back in. Let me stop spending this expensive emotional currency. I lead a home. I lead a family. I support other people. I got to be able to show up in alignment with my purpose. I'm putting words in your mouth, Tony, but I believe that's I believe that's the reason you did it, brother. I know you. They took this brother, Nelson Mandela, separated him from his family, put him in a position of physical pain and mental anguish because of what he believed, because of his purpose. He had to drink from an unimaginable bitter cup. Most of us ain't had to drink nothing. We mad. I'm upset. I can't regulate my emotions because of what somebody on the television is saying. I'm telling you, this is an unanswered and terrifying question. I really want you to think about it. Like, would you be willing to bear 3 decades of confinement and hard labor and torture and inhumane treatment for what you believe? The reason we look up to Nelson Mandela, the reason that we honor this brother is because he was in prison for 27 years at the age of 44. Mandela gave the most valuable years of his life for what he believed. Here's a second question. If you were in prison for what you believe, after being in prison for 3 decades, upon being released, would you preach a message of forgiveness, unity, and love? Would you be like, don't worry about, no, don't be mad for me. Don't give up your emotional currency for me. Love them. This country should be united. Forgive them. Would you? Would you? You believe in what you believe so deeply. Here's the thing. I honestly believe that many of us don't really believe the rhetoric that we hear, that we get emotional about. You don't really believe it yourself. But because you don't have an anchor of belief, you're blown with the wind. Oh, that sounds reasonable. I'm mad. That seems to make sense. I'm upset. What is your vision? What is your purpose? For many of us, based on what I heard last week, the acid of bitterness would have activated almost instantaneously. And how I know it is because it got activated on a small, insignificant offense. Nobody did anything personally to you. The nation had an election and the majority of the people picked somebody that you didn't like. That's what happened. Isn't that what happens in a fair democracy? And then here's the thing. People are starting to question it. They're like, well, was it a fair election? Did Elon get involved? Did the technology get involved? Or all that, folks say we need to recount all of this. It's like, oh, wait a second. When the other side did that, that was unbearable. Isn't it interesting how perspectives change? And this is not a political conversation. I'm trying to get us to gain control of our emotions, to get some perspective. Scott Fitzgerald said, the mark of true intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts at one time. Are you truly intelligent? Can you actually be with this conversation? Can you hold two opposing thoughts at one time? How could we expect to surmount any act towards us and those we love when we can barely maintain control of our emotions and actions, when we simply perceive a tone of injustice, just a tone of injustice? Like ain't nobody hit you over the head. Just the tone of injustice sets you off. Just a tone, just a word. In the summer of 2009, I had the opportunity to travel to South Africa, and I visit Robben Island. And this is where Mandela was banished and isolated and imprisoned. And before that, I had a profound respect for Nelson Mandela's inspirational leadership as South Africa's first democratically elected president. That, by the way, there were people that didn't like that. Right? Okay. But let me tell you something. After I visited that island prison and I saw for myself the circumstances that he spent 18 years of his life in, that expanded my admiration. I had to ask myself, Linnell, could you do that? Could you be imprisoned in this small jail cell where you have to pee and poop in a bucket? And by the way, the bucket don't go nowhere. Probably got tossed once a day, and he had to toss it. Which means you got to sleep next to that, sit next to that, think next to that. Let me tell you something, man. I remember it like it was yesterday. I stood outside that cell. It's like a chill ran through my skin. And I could just, like my heart, I could feel my heart. This man, in those circumstances, allowed himself to be warmed by love and transformed into a more loving and courageous leader than he was when he went in. It's not the external circumstances that make you. It's who you are internally that creates you. The South Africans called Nelson Mandela. Madiba. They affectionately used this to address Mandela. My prayer is that we learn from Mandela and we meet our present and future challenges with the same type of grace. Most of us will never experience what he experienced. We have so many examples of greatness that look just like us. Like, are we taking these examples? Are we stepping into these examples as men? As women? Mandela never let anyone own his emotional currency, even in the harshest conditions. Even in the harshest conditions. I think I can objectively say you haven't experienced that. If he didn't get mad, if he didn't get all upset, then you got to ask yourself, why am I mad? Why am I upset? What is your emotional anchor? What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to actually see how your words and actions will impact the emotions of other people before you act and say what it is you're thinking about. I already know. Like, here's the thing. Like, I already thought about how this is going to land on some people. Like, I already thought about how is this going to land for some folks. Some folks going to be upset. Some folks going to have something to say. I knew the phone lines were going to light up. I knew certain people were going to call. Like, because I thought about this. And I also knew it still needs to be said. It still needs to be said. And if it makes a person emotional, I hope that they're listening to what I'm saying and beginning to take control of their emotional currency. If it makes you emotional, what it tells me is that you're emotional because you don't have a deep vision. You don't have a clear vision. You don't have a clear purpose. You're not directed. And that is where we should be emotionally vested. Some time ago, I think early this year, I talked about 3 areas of strategic offense. Problem is, most of us are constantly playing defense. We're on the ropes of life. You want to get on the offensive? There are 3 areas of strategic offense. The first is physical, your health. Let's be clear, what you put in your mouth can dictate your emotions. It can manipulate you. It can create depression and anxiety. What you put in your mouth, yes. The second is mental, your mental diet. 3 areas of strategic offense. Folks can't understand why they can't focus. They can't understand why they show up the way they are. Oh, well, it's because you listen and watch anything. 3 areas of strategic offense. The third is emotional. What is emotional offense? First is self-confidence. See, when I have a particular amount of self-efficacy, what is self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is believing in my ability to adapt. And if I believe that I can adapt, then that impacts my self-confidence. And if I believe I can adapt, then that actually increases my self-confidence in any situation because I believe that I can adapt. And if I can adapt, then I'm confident about who I can be and how I can move in the next 4 years. And then I can build a strategy around that. The other part of emotional offense is adaptability, flexibility in your mindset, openness to change. There is one guarantee, and that is change. And the only time you won't get change is when you're standing at a vending machine. Other than that, change is coming. Change is coming. That's the only time you can't properly predict change coming. Like, did my change come? I didn't get my quarter. Adaptability, the ability to be flexible in your mindset, open to change, understanding that change will happen, understanding the laws of rhythm dictate that when the pendulum swings to one side, it will definitely swing to the other. That's why I was telling our day, like, I already know Trump gonna win because the pendulum has to swing. The pendulum must swing. That is the law of rhythm. The third part of emotional offense, is emotional regulation. Can you actually slow down and quiet your mind? A week ago, I taught my son about reframing, like how to look at something that you perceive as bad and find the good in it. Why is that important? Because what I see is what will be. I want you to wrap your mind around this. because somebody might say, man, it sounds like you happy about what happened. What I see, I have to be happy about what happened because what I see is what will be. I got to see the good in it. I have to reframe. Oh, okay. We going after Big Pharma now? I'm happy about that. We taking the dyes out the food, RFK Jr.? I'm happy about that. Like we so jacked up, we can't reframe. He's not a doctor. Oh, well, look what the doctors have done. Like, have they helped us? Look at what the qualified folks have done. Like, you can't reframe that? You're so caught that you can't reframe? Emotional regulation is the ability to be mindful and reframe. This has nothing to do with political affiliation. It has everything to do with mental gymnastics and flexibility. So what strategies are you using to regulate your emotions? How are you staying on the offense? Folks want to be tough. You want to be rough. Hey, get on the emotional offense then. If I can dictate how you feel, you're not tough. Mastering emotional intelligence is the key to protecting your emotional currency. Mastering emotional intelligence is the key to protecting your emotional currency. We were having a conversation 2 weeks ago about disciplining children. I gave the example of how my son upset me so bad he didn't get in trouble. Emotional, and I'm not saying I got it all figured out. I'm just saying, like, hey, I'm doing the best that I can to practice this. Emotional intelligence. This is not a good time. My wife's like, I'm surprised he didn't get in trouble. No, he didn't get in trouble because it wouldn't have been a good decision for me. I had to back off. Emotional intelligence. Here's the thing about this life, you all. If you don't paint it, it won't be in the picture. Like, write it down. If you don't paint it, it will not be in your picture. So what are you going to do? You're going to allow the next 4 years to be painted by someone else? We had a whole show where I talked about being the artist of your life, crafting your life, painting your life story. And I talked about how what I'm afraid of is many folks are standing with the paintbrush and they got the canvas of life right there, and they're not putting any paint on the canvas because they're upset because every time I paint the canvas, somebody rips it off. I got to start fresh, Linnell. I got to start fresh. I'm like, well, isn't that what every new day is supposed to be? You're telling me that because you feel like you can't fully control it, you're just not going to paint? One of the things about life is that every time you put paint on your canvas, life's going to splash a little bit up there too. So then what do? I didn't mean to put blue, but let me put that. I didn't want blue on here, but let me just blend that in. Oh, wow, purple got on the page. Purple got splashed on my page. How do I blend that into the picture I was looking to create in my life? Because if you don't paint it, it won't be in the picture. There's going to be some paint on your canvas. Are you blending it, or are you allowing that to dictate what the picture will be? And I think this is why we can look at some people's lives, or you can do personal reflection and you look at your life and you can't make it all out. What's going on? It looks chaotic. Might be simply because you're not applying the paintbrush. You're not using the paint that's splashing on the canvas in a way to blend in with the vision you had for the canvas in the first place. A masterful artist can let you pick the colors. Throw it up there, man. Watch what I do with it. The beauty is the creator gives us partnership in creating. We have autonomy and will and volition in creating. And many of us still aren't picking up the brush. Your emotions are your energy in motion. And when I'm working with my clients and when I'm working with the Slay Your Goals members and at the masterclass, one of the things that I'm going to teach is that every goal you set should be made emotional. Like, that's how we want to use our emotional currency. You want to be emotionally vested in the goal. Your subconscious mind needs that emotional connection to the goal to actually thrive and create it. What is the experience you intend to create in your life? You intend to create. Not the circumstances, not the country, not the Senate, not the House, not the President, not the Supreme Court. You. What do you intend to create in your life? I had the opportunity to listen to a speaker this week. She was a keynote speaker at at a location I was at, and actually wrote down some of what she said. She came out on the stage, and the first thing she said is, you are the architect of your life, and this period of time is your stage. You are the architect of your life, and this period of time right now is your stage. You're on stage right now. What are you doing? Then she went on to say, there will always be adversity. She said, and what I have for adversity are what I call the 3 R's. She said, resilience, resourcefulness, and relentlessness. She said, you will never change your life if you don't change your mindset. Then she went on to say, when you hit a stumbling block, what will you do? Then she said about resourcefulness, everything you need is within you. Everything you need is within you, which is why if you have anger and frustration inside of you, it's covering the real gifts. Her name was Maggie Cook, by the way. Phenomenal success story. A woman who went from abuse and poverty to now becoming a multimillionaire that has sold her company for hundreds of millions of dollars. All because she was willing to paint the picture. She's willing to paint the picture. Are you willing to paint the picture of your life this morning? Or are you going to allow external circumstances to completely block out the page? What I'm afraid of is that when it comes to true resilience, truly, like we're just not where we should be, especially our emotional resilience. Our emotional resilience. The most important resource in the world are your emotions. Emotions are the ultimate resource for creativity. Phenomenal things have been created when people felt down. Charles Dickens wrote Great Expectations after his fiancée left him. He had a choice. Do I take this emotional upset and revel in it, feel sorry for myself, or do I turn it into magnificent creativity? Emotions are the ultimate resource for commitment. Your determination, your certainty, your flexibility and adaptability, your ability to connect, your compassion, but most importantly, it is the ultimate resource for your vision. Here's how you emotionally regulate. You want to know how I emotionally regulate? Something happens outside of me. I notice what's going on for me emotionally. I close my eyes and I get present to the vision. The vision for my health and well-being. How does that feel when that's accomplished? You see where I'm going here? How does that feel when you knock that one out the park, Linnell? Breathe out what was there. The vision for my relationship with my wife. How does that feel when you all create that? The connection, the intimacy, the love that we know can continue to grow. How does that feel? Like, how can I keep feeling the same when I think about my wife? The fact that I'm loved, that a person has dedicated their life to be with me. Breathe out what was there. My children. The vision I have for my children. Can I let my son asked me, he said, hey, is it a bad thing that Trump won? I said, no, it's not a bad thing. You think I'm about to load him with that? No, it's not a bad thing. We good. Don't matter. So, okay. Why he had a question? Because he heard from somewhere. He heard something from somewhere. Nah, we don't have that energy in here. Not in this house. We good. We're fine. When I think about my children, when I think about Legend and Rain and the vision that my wife and I have for their lives and what that will look like for him to be a young man and for her to be a young woman. Breathe out what I don't want there. All of a sudden, I'm feeling better. All of a sudden, I'm thinking differently. Then I move to visualization around the work that I'm doing, the impact of my purpose, the opportunity to impact leaders, the opportunity to impact business owners, the opportunity to impact the community. Breathe out what was there. How can I be in a negative emotional state? My financial goals, my financial vision, the ability to make impact on people who don't have what God has blessed me with, the ability to have impacts on generations after me, to create legacy. Breathe that out. Breathe that out. Emotional regulation. Then I started thinking about my spiritual vision, the vision for my purpose, the vision that the Creator provided me, the place that He wants me to focus. Can you see how after 2 to 3 minutes of that, how can I be frustrated? How can I be upset? How can I be emotionally volatile? My vision is where my emotions are based. That is what's going to get my emotional energy. Anything that was left, breathe out. Emotional regulation. See, here's the thing about personal goals. The reason we struggle with our personal goals is because they're not connected to our survival. And most of us, we are emotionally vested in our survival. And so if I don't know how to emotionally detach from my survival so I can actually have a vision for thriving, then I'm stuck in survival. And the hack that I believe for achieving your personal goals, I'm going to teach this in detail on December 28th. You can go to slayyourgoals.com and get on the wait list. The hack for achieving your personal goals is the future must include getting crystal clear on the emotional experience that achieving the goal will provide. So if my emotional state is based on the emotional experience I intend to have in the future, then the present doesn't control how I feel. Let me say that one more time. Make sure y'all got that. When I am emotionally invested in my goals, I'm crystal clear on the emotional experience that the achievement of my goals will provide, then my emotional state is based on the future vision and not my present circumstance. Your emotional state is just as important as your intrinsic desire to survive. And your subconscious mind knows this. And for most of us, we have to begin retraining and breaking down the subconscious mind so the conscious mind can begin doing what we intend for it to do. How do you retrain the subconscious mind? Your mental diet, your emotional diet, your physical diet. If you don't paint it, it won't be in the picture. If you're not intentionally creating what's next, then you'll be arrested by what's now. Write that down for me. If you're not intentionally creating what's next, you'll be arrested by right now. I don't have time to be emotional about right now. I'm emotionally invested in what I intend to create. That's where my emotional currency goes. That's where my emotional currency is. We got to stop spending our emotional currency as if it doesn't have value. All the way down to your coworkers. All the way down to your sister or your brother that gets on your nerves. All the way, anyone that can activate you emotionally owns you. They own you. I'm not willing to be owned. If you don't develop emotional control and resilience, other people will own you and your experience of life. And I only get one. I got one shot at this. And I love you, but you're not going to be able to control it. I promise you that. You're not controlling me. I am in control of my emotions, not my external circumstance. What controls me is the vision I have for the future. That's where my emotions are vested. That's where my emotions will be. Whew. The hidden cost of giving away your emotional currency. I said this before. I'm going to say it again. Most of us live in the right now. We make decisions from right now. Thus, we're creating our lives from right now. And the reason we do that is because right now feels comfortable. Here's the scary part. In our community, 1 in 3 of us have trauma. And unfortunately, most of us aren't doing anything about it. And what happens is that trauma dictates how I feel about simple things. Because there's a scar, there's a wound. Like, think about this. There could be, when you have trauma, there's a wound. Right now, if I had a wound on my hand, something as simple as picking up this bottle. It's simple, but it can be difficult and it can hurt. Might even drop the bottle because I'm wounded. And right now, if what I'm saying is like, it's not making sense to you, like, Linnell, it's not as simple as you say. Consider that you just might be wounded and it's time to get the wounds healed so that you can be in control of your emotional capacity, your emotional resilience, your emotional flexibility, your emotional adaptability. This is why it matters. This is why therapy matters. One of my clients reminded me this week, we were talking about the election, and she said, hey, I listened to the last show. She says, you seem so unbothered. And she said, and I know that your essence name, one of your essence names is sovereignty. Do you think that plays into it? I said, because I think sometimes when somebody mentions sovereignty, we think about control of others. But if I'm going to have control of others, first and foremost, I must be able to control myself. Almost every person listening to this broadcast this morning, I imagine if I asked you, are you a sovereign being? You would say yes. And if I began to even indicate that maybe you weren't, you push back. No, Linnell, I'm sovereign. Okay. You're sovereign? Show me. Show me. If you are sovereign, then what happens externally does not matter to you because you control how you feel. You control your emotional state. You control the outcomes. That's sovereignty. That's sovereignty. You want to be sovereign. It sounds good. But sovereignty requires responsibility. Sovereignty doesn't allow for you to be emotionally manipulated because anyone that's sovereign understands how expensive that is. I'm emotionally vested in my vision, which doesn't give me much more space for emotionalism anywhere else. I'm unbothered. I was in Vegas 2 weeks ago, the day after the election. Bunch of them had on red MAGA hats. How you doing? You good? Hey, how you doing? I'm good. I'm good. I'm unbothered. I'm sovereign. I'm sovereign. I love you. Do not pay the hidden cost of giving away your emotional currency. Protect it, invest it in your vision, and let it fuel that vision for the future. So here's the challenge. Here's the challenge right here. You can even think about the visual. Just seeing a MAGA hat will hijack some of us. Think about this. This is where we've gotten. Just seeing a Make America Great hat. Don't let me wear one. Oh my God. Oh, like, this is where things have gone. Like, the visual will hijack you. You don't even know them. You don't even know the person. And the visual will, this is where they have us. They got us on the surface, man. We got to get deeper. You got to be so fat. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Congratulations on the win. It doesn't matter. I'm so vested in my vision. I'm so ready for what's next. It doesn't matter. Here's a challenge this week. Can you take control, full control of your emotional energy? Choose one goal. See, this is the thing. You got to get outside of what's happening around you. You got to get outside of what the media is saying. I can guarantee you if you turn on the television, there's going to be people talking, I'm concerned. Did you see what happened this week? I'm concerned. We're in trouble. You're going to let them forecast that into your life? Ain't no trouble happening here. We're set to thrive in my household. Are you set to thrive in yours? Are you set to go to the next level in yours? What's the focus? The focus is 2025 over here. What we're going to create in 2025, what we're going to create in 2026, what blessings will the Creator pass along? That's the focus. Turn on the television, we're concerned. Well, y'all can be concerned by yourself. I'm focused on this vision. I'm focused on these goals. I need to be hearing my inputs coming from people who are focused too. What's next? Where are we going? This week, take control of your emotional energy. It's time. We had it. It's been long enough. I think we had a nice little runway to slush and slide. It's been long enough, family. It's been long enough. Take control of your emotional energy. It's too expensive. You turn on the television and they seem concerned. They seem downcast. They're emotional. Turn it off. That's not a good diet for me. That's not a good diet for me. I promise you. I promise you all they're trying to do is sell you what's next. Sell you a pill, sell you some medicine, sell you some liquor, sell you some food, sell you a car. They gotta pay the bills. How do they pay the bills? They keep you concerned too. I gotta watch the next segment. They said they're gonna tell me what's going on. No, I'm gonna tell you what's going on for me. My goals. My goals. So this week, choose a goal. Join me. Choose a goal and connect it to your emotional state. And then focus on taking steps there. That's the game. That's the game we should be playing. That's the game of creation. Because how about if the entire community does that, then it doesn't matter who's sitting in the White House anymore because we control what's happening. We are vested right here in the community and we're creating what's happening. That's what we need. I love you. I promise I do. The Creator has given me a gift of vision. He gave me a gift of purpose. And I promise you, if I can line you up like they did in 2020 and inoculate everybody, I would. But I can't. You have to accept it. You have to make a decision. You have to say, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready to do this differently. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of being concerned about external things. I'm tired of being focused on things I can't control. It's time for me to get clear on my vision and control my controllables. Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WBON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Linnell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.